Strangest things ever found on beaches, caught on camera. Hello, and a warm welcome to all viewers of Discovery Fact. My friends, when you think about the beach, what is the very first image that comes to your mind? Is it the fiery red sunrise rising from the horizon, the gentle waves rolling onto the shore, or the refreshing sea breeze brushing across your face? Not to sound superstitious or anything, but going to the beach and sitting there watching the sunset, holding a coconut in your hand, your feet buried in the sand, wow. Just thinking about that feeling alone can make life seem worth living for a few more decades. It really is that good, isn't it? But if you think the ocean is always as peaceful and romantic as it looks in travel photos, then you might be very mistaken. Why? Because the vast ocean out there is actually like a gigantic mystery box. And every now and then, for reasons no one quite understands, that box spits out some incredibly strange things right onto the shore. Sometimes people discover bizarre creatures that look like they stepped straight out of a monster movie. Other times, massive chunks of flesh weighing hundreds of pounds wash up, leaving everyone staring and asking, "What on earth is this thing?" And occasionally the stories get even more chilling, like mysterious mummies or strange shapes that make people wonder, could mermaids actually be real? Just hearing about it is enough to give you goosebumps, right? So in today's video, join me in Discovery Fact as we explore some of the mysterious, strange, and sometimes slightly creepy things that have been discovered on beaches around the world. Trust me, some of these discoveries will leave you completely stunned. Now then, are you ready to explore with me? If you are, let's jump right in and begin with our very first discovery. A strange white carcass that stirred up an entire island. Recently, on a beach on Simberi Island, Papua New Guinea, local residents unexpectedly discovered a strange white carcass that had washed ashore. From a distance, it had a rather bizarre appearance. A long, pale white body with certain sections exposing structures that looked like a spine, and most notably, the rear part appeared to resemble a tail. That was more than enough to send everyone's imagination racing faster than the ocean waves. Almost immediately, photos of the creature began spreading across social media, and within a short time, all kinds of theories started popping up. Some people were convinced that this was the body of a mermaid. Others insisted it must be some kind of ancient marine creature that science had never documented before. There were even people who firmly claimed that this was proof the ocean still holds countless secrets that humanity has yet to uncover. Sounds pretty mysterious, doesn't it? But when experts began taking a closer look at the shared images, they had a slightly more realistic perspective. Some researchers suggested that the strange carcass could be what scientists call a globster. This term is used to describe large masses of heavily decomposed marine animals that have been washed ashore by the waves. The name globster might sound like a cartoon character, but in reality, it's a fairly familiar phenomenon among ocean researchers. When a large marine animal dies and floats in the water for a long time, its body gradually decomposes and loses its original shape, leaving behind pale, unrecognizable masses of tissue. And when those remains eventually wash up on the beach, people often assume they've just discovered some kind of mysterious creature. However, even if we rule out the possibility of a mermaid, the big question still remains: what species did this carcass actually belong to? To answer that question, some experts believe it could be the remains of a small whale or another type of marine mammal. Others lean toward the possibility that it may have been a dugong, also known as a sea cow, a gentle marine mammal that lives in shallow tropical waters. The reason is that in a few of the photos, people could faintly make out what appeared to be vertebrae, as well as positions resembling legs or fins that had already decomposed. These details led many researchers to believe that the original creature may have been a mammal that lived in the ocean. But here's the problem. Everything is based solely on photographs. No tissue samples were collected, no DNA testing was conducted, and no detailed scientific analysis was performed. Because of that, identifying the creature with certainty is almost like trying to guess the image in a painting that has had half of it torn away. And so, even to this day, the strange white carcass on Simberi Island remains an unsolved mystery. It may simply be the heavily decomposed remains of an ordinary marine animal, but it could also belong to a rarely seen species that humans almost never encounter in its intact form. No one knows for sure, After all, the ocean has been vast and mysterious for millions of years, and sometimes all it takes is one strange thing washing up on the sand to make the entire world debate what it was we just saw. Mysterious skeleton, nearly 6 feet long, appears on an Australian beach. Taking a walk along the beach is usually a relaxing experience. The cool sea breeze, the gentle sound of waves rolling onto the shore, and every now and then bending down to pick up a seashell to take home as a souvenir. But sometimes, the ocean likes to play a little trick. Instead of giving you a pretty shell, it throws something onto the shore that makes you stop in your tracks for a few seconds and wonder, what kind of creature did this bone come from? And that was exactly the situation Bobby Lee Oates, 34, found herself in when she and her friends were driving along the coast looking for a place to camp. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until they spotted a long skeleton lying on the sand, something that looked oddly familiar, yet also a little unsettling. The skeleton was discovered on Keppel Sands Beach in Queensland, Australia. According to Oates, the first thing that caught her attention was the skull and rib cage, because their shapes looked somewhat similar to human bones. When she looked more closely, Oates noticed that the skeleton also had a long bone extending from the back, which looked like some kind of tail or unusual limb. The entire skeleton measured about 5 feet 11 inches long, roughly the height of an average adult. Naturally, imaginations began to run wild. Oates openly admitted that she had no idea what creature it might be, but its appearance immediately made her think of something straight out of a movie, a mermaid. And once the photos were posted on social media, the internet certainly didn't hold back its imagination either. Within a short time, the post began receiving a flood of comments from all directions. Some people excitedly wrote, "Congratulations, you just found a mermaid!" Others agreed with the theory, suggesting that the skeleton, with its long tail, resembled the structure of a half-human, half-fish creature. Some even speculated that it might belong to a completely new species never recorded by science. But as always, the internet tends to split into two camps: those who enjoy imaginative theories, and those who prefer to bring things back to reality. Another group of commenters looked at the photos and said quite seriously, "That actually looks like human bones." Because of that, they suggested contacting local police just to be safe. Meanwhile, a few other users proposed a very Australian-sounding explanation. It might simply be the remains of a kangaroo whose body had decomposed, causing the skeleton to look distorted and unusual. By this point, the story had turned into a small online debate. A mermaid, human bones, a kangaroo, or something else entirely? Eventually, experts stepped in to provide a more scientific perspective. One of them was researcher Rob Deville from the Zoological Society of London. After examining the images, he offered a fairly reasonable explanation. According to him, the skeleton did not resemble a mermaid at all. Instead, it most likely belonged to a marine mammal, such as a dolphin or a small whale. The reason is that the structure of the skull, ribs, and the long bone extending from the back closely resembles the skeletal system of marine animals that have undergone decomposition. When this happens, the bones can become exposed in ways that appear quite unusual to people who are not familiar with animal skeletons. In other words, the ocean had once again made people think they had discovered something incredibly mysterious, when in reality, it may simply have been a familiar sea creature whose shape had been reshaped by time, decomposition, and the waves. Bloody mermaid body washes ashore on a beach in England? You know, there's something fascinating about the internet. All it takes is one strange photo and suddenly the whole world can spend days talking about it. And if that photo happens to involve a mermaid, well then imagination online tends to move faster than the ocean waves. Some people immediately believe it's a legendary creature emerging from the sea, while others say, something about this doesn't look right. And that's exactly what happened on October 2nd at Great Yarmouth Beach, a well-known tourist destination in England, when a man accidentally discovered something that gave quite a few people chills. The man who made the discovery was Paul Jones. While walking along the shoreline, he noticed a strange body lying on the sand. According to his initial description, the creature appeared to have a human-like skull, at least one arm, and a body that was covered in blood. Hearing that alone might already bring to mind something straight out of a horror movie, right? Without hesitation, Paul quickly recorded a short video and uploaded it to Facebook with a rather shocking caption. Today at Great Yarmouth, we saw something that looked like a dead mermaid washed up on the beach. That was all it took for the internet to explode. The clip spread rapidly and soon received more than 15,000 shares. Viewers from all over the world rushed to the comments section, each offering their own theories. Some people firmly insisted that this was proof that mere people truly exist. Others carefully analyzed every detail in the video, from the shape of the skull and the arm to the unusual lower body. If you happen to watch that clip late at night with the dim lighting and the sound of waves rolling in the background, there's a good chance it might have given you a slight shiver. But the internet rarely agrees on just one explanation. As the more mysterious theories began spreading, another group of viewers approached the situation from a more practical perspective. They argued that the object on the beach didn't resemble a mermaid at all. Instead, it looked more like a human body with its legs wrapped in a plastic bag. At that point, the story suddenly started to sound even more disturbing than the legend itself. Meanwhile, some others offered a less alarming explanation. According to them, the strange creature could simply have been the decomposing remains of a seal or another marine animal. When a body breaks down and is pushed ashore by the waves, its structure can become so distorted that it ends up looking like something completely different. And that's actually something that happens quite often with things that drift in from the ocean. When a marine animal dies and floats in the water for several days, soft tissues begin to decompose, bones become exposed, and the skin becomes distorted. As a result, when the remains finally wash up on the beach, they can take on an extremely bizarre appearance. Sometimes just a quick glance is enough for people to believe they've discovered a legendary creature. In reality, the ocean has a bit of a habit of playing tricks on humans like that. To this day, the story of the Bloody Mermaid at Great Yarmouth Beach still doesn't have a clear conclusion. It may simply have been the heavily decomposed remains of a marine animal. It could also have been a prank, or just a misunderstanding that the internet exaggerated. But no matter what the truth is, the incident reveals something quite interesting. Sometimes all it takes is a single mysterious image appearing on a beach for the entire world to spend days debating whether they've just seen a sea monster, a mermaid, or simply something very ordinary that the waves have reshaped. 330-pound creature washes ashore on an Australian beach. Imagine taking a peaceful morning walk along the beach. The breeze is cool and refreshing, the waves gently roll onto the shore, and seabirds circle overhead. It's the perfect slow down and enjoy life kind of moment. But while you're strolling along like that, you suddenly notice something huge lying motionless on the sand ahead. You walk a little closer and realize it's not a piece of driftwood. It's not a regular fish either. In fact, it almost looks like some kind of sea monster that the ocean just kicked out onto the shore. How would you feel in that moment? Probably pretty excited, right? Well, that's exactly the situation two visitors, John Lindholm and Riley Lindholm, found themselves in while taking a walk along Moore Park Beach. At first, they assumed it was just some ordinary object that had washed ashore with the waves. But when they moved closer, both of them almost froze for a few seconds. Lying right in front of them was the carcass of a massive creature nearly 6.5 feet long, weighing an estimated 330 pounds. Yes, you heard that right. 330 pounds, that's about the combined weight of two average adults. And the creature was stretched out across the sand with a wide, bulky body. One glance was enough to tell it definitely wasn't something you see every day. Interestingly, John had once worked as a boat captain, meaning he had spent many years at sea and encountered all kinds of fish, big and small. Yet even he scratched his head and admitted something quite honestly. He had never seen a creature that large before. At that point, many people, probably just like us, began imagining all sorts of possibilities. Sea monsters, ancient creatures, or mysterious fish that live in the deep ocean. Not wanting to keep their curiosity to themselves, the pair quickly took photos and posted them on social media, asking the online community, "Does anyone know what this creature is?" And of course, the internet immediately jumped into the discussion. Some people guessed it might be a giant species of fish. Others suggested it could be a rare animal that had drifted in from deeper waters. One of the most frequently mentioned theories was that the creature might be an Atlantic tripletail, also known as a tripletail sea perch, but an unusually large one. This species of fish is already fairly big by nature, But if the animal on that beach really was a triple tail, then its size would place it closer to the giant of the fish world category rather than something ordinary. What made the mystery even more intriguing was that the creature's body showed no obvious injuries. There were no shark bite marks and no cuts from fishing nets. Because of that, John speculated that the animal may have simply died of old age, and its body was later carried ashore by ocean currents and waves. It all sounds simple enough, but when fisheries authorities in Queensland began investigating, things turned out to be far less straightforward. Experts from the Queensland Museum were invited to help identify the creature. However, there was one major problem. The carcass had already decomposed significantly, making proper identification extremely difficult. And so, even today, the original question asked by the two beachwalkers still doesn't have a definitive answer. Was the creature simply a very large but ordinary fish? Or was it a rare species that humans seldom encounter? What do you think the answer might be? If you have any ideas about what this creature could be, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Mysterious giant eyeball washes ashore at Pompano Beach. Imagine you're taking a walk along the beach. Your feet sink into the soft sand, the sound of waves gently crashing fills the air, and the ocean breeze clears your mind. Everything feels so peaceful that you even start thinking about what kind of seafood would be perfect for dinner tonight. But then, up ahead, you notice a strange object lying on the sand. Curious, you walk closer to take a look and suddenly realize that the thing lying in front of you is a giant eyeball, staring blankly into the distance. It sounds like the opening scene of a horror movie, doesn't it? But this story actually happened in real life. The incident began when a tourist walking along Pompano Beach unexpectedly discovered a massive eyeball that had washed ashore. The eyeball was so large that anyone who saw it would instinctively pause for a few seconds. Naturally, the tourist quickly took a photo and posted it on social media. Not long after the image appeared online, the internet jumped into action. And as usual, when people encounter something mysterious, their imaginations travel farther than the ocean waves. Some users insisted that it had to be the eye of some undiscovered sea monster. Others took a more detective-like approach, seriously analyzing the image and suggesting it might belong to a giant creature living in the deep ocean. Within a short time, what had once been just a lone eyeball sitting quietly on the sand suddenly became an internet sensation, sparking discussions everywhere. As curiosity continued to grow, officials from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission quickly stepped in to investigate. According to a spokesperson from the agency, the initial explanation was fairly simple. The eye most likely belonged to a large fish, such as a tuna, another deep water species, or possibly even a swordfish, a species well known for its impressive size. That explanation sounded reasonable, but science rarely stops at something that merely sounds reasonable. Scientist Eric Warrant from Lund University, who has studied swordfish vision extensively, suggested that if the eyeball wasn't artificial, there was a strong chance it indeed came from a swordfish. These fish have large eyes that help them hunt in deep water where light levels are very low. However, that raised another interesting question. If the eyeball truly belonged to a swordfish, why was it lying alone on a beach in Florida? Another perspective came from biologist Sunka Johnson of Duke University. He also suggested that the eye might belong to a large, bony fish such as a swordfish or a marlin. According to him, many people don't realize that the eyes of these fish are actually quite large because most of the structure sits deep inside the skull. But before any final conclusion could be reached, another theory appeared, one that sounded even more like something from the deep ocean. Marine biologist Robert L. Pittman suggested that the eye might belong to a giant squid. The reasoning was that squid eyes are embedded in soft tissue, so they can sometimes become separated from the body during predation or decomposition. At this point, many people probably started imagining enormous squids lurking in the dark depths of the ocean. But science once again stepped in with a reality check. Expert Trevor Wardell from the Marine Biological Laboratory noted that he had never seen a squid with blue-colored eyes like the one found on the beach. In addition, squid pupils typically have a W-shaped form when not fully expanded, rather than the perfectly round shape seen in the mysterious eyeball. So in the end, what creature did the eye belong to? To this day, despite numerous analyses and debates among scientists, The exact origin of the giant eyeball still hasn't been definitively confirmed, and once again, the ocean has managed to keep one more of its secrets, just as it has done for millions of years. Pretty mysterious, isn't it? Dear friends, after watching all the stories we've just explored, many of you might realize something quite interesting. Beaches aren't just about white sand, blue waves, and perfectly staged photos for social media. Sometimes all it takes is a single powerful wave hitting the shore, and the ocean casually sends up a few surprise gifts that make people freeze for a few seconds. From strange creatures to mysterious skeletons to discoveries that spark heated debates across the internet for days, these are just a tiny glimpse of the vast ocean out there. Who knows? One day, while you're walking along the beach and bending down to pick up what you think is a seashell, you might actually end up picking up a mystery that the entire internet starts talking about. It could happen, so what about you? Out of the 6 discoveries we just talked about, which one did you find the most unbelievable? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to give Discovery Fact a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any more fascinating discoveries. For now, goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video.